Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Blackletter Brunch. My name is Raul Martinez, and our guest today is calligrapher, designer, and teacher Rachel Yallop. Rachel's presentation will be about the ever-fascinating line. Rachel, tell us more about
Lovely.
the ever-fascinating line.
Yes, that's lovely. Thank you. Yes, I was delighted to be asked to do this because, I could go on about line for hours and hours, but don't worry, it's only going to be an hour. um, the letters that we write, of course, are made up of lines, and those lines can be so varied. Obviously, we have different tools to use. So, for example, the mark made with a wide flat brush is very different to one made with a pointed nib. But there are other qualities and variations too. So, how something really as basic as how long is a line? How wide is it? Is it textured? Is it solid? Does it have what I would call a bitten edge to it, like you see with particularly ruling pen lines? What happens if you overlap with another line? What happens to those two lines? How do they interact with each other? Um, I think my fascination with lines stems from my love of drawing, and I have drawn my whole life. And something I did a lot as a child and continued when I went to art college. My parents didn't agree with having a television. So when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s, no television. They thought my brother and I were better sort of employed doing drawing, for example, or reading, or making things, or whatever, rather than sitting in front of the television. And in many ways, looking back, I'm very glad about that because I think it encouraged my creativity. Um, I started when I started doing life drawing, drawing from the body, when I was on my foundation course. That's just after I'd left school. I was at Exeter College of Art in Devon, and I had actually, amazingly, already done a bit when I was at school, at the start of my A-level course. And just an amusing story as an aside. I went to a girls' boarding school, actually only weekly boarding, so thankfully I could get away at the weekends. And anyway, on no account were we allowed any contact with boys. And of course, many of us were boy mad, and but I was actually allowed to go to a life drawing class in the city and draw naked men. The irony not lost on my 16-year-old self at the time. And I remember on one occasion returning to the boarding house and being met by the headmistress, Miss Morford. Funny how you never forget these names, do you? And she was very interested to see my evening's work. But of course it was art, so that was okay. After I started learning calligraphy, again at art college, I think perhaps the art of writing lines, the art of drawing lines, replaced the drawn aspect of making lines. But after my return to country life, which is 18 years ago now, and I did life drawing again, I started to draw houses, to draw animals, and I had quite a few commissions of pet portraits, and found actually that I would much rather draw fur than human skin. And I think it was that fascination with line again. Those fine hairs on a horse, or a dog's or a cat's coat. And I love animals anyway, so it was a pleasure to do. So now I'm going to turn the camera around and I'm going to show you various examples. And I'm also going to demonstrate some lines. So we'll get started on that. Let me just organize myself here. Right. Okay, so this up and right on. Raoul and I tested this earlier and we felt that that was all okay. So thinking about the drawing. So here we have a drawing of a horse. And if I just zoom in on this, it's things like these lines on the mane, these lines here. Okay, this was done using charcoal and a Conte pencil, but these lines are taken out with an eraser. And my goodness, the difference it makes you've got this shaded in and so on, but then you just remove some of that using an eraser and it lifts it. The piece comes to life, and again here in these places as well. So actually to draw, obviously you draw lines with a pencil or with the Conte pencil, but in this case, I am drawing lines with an eraser as well. So just to go back to the life drawing, I mean, these are examples of life drawing I did when I came to live here. And again, this was the charcoal and the Conte pencil. And just looking at some other drawing as well. Again, very linear here. So I was by the side of a road. I think I was in Spain actually when I was doing this, and these very tall grasses, you know, would fascinate me with the lines and what about the position of those lines one to another, for example? What about the space here compared to the space here? And how those lines interact with one another was always something I would find fascinating. And here is more animal portraiture. So again, you know, I would love doing this because these are particularly sort of hairy dogs. And so many drawn lines in here and also erased lines for doing the fur of this dog. And let's just move some of these out of the way. And here is another one. So again, the same technique and so on, but the lines here, let's just home in on that. Here, done with an eraser. And then particularly when I was doing the life drawing and when doing the animal portraiture as well, I thought surely I can use this sort of technique when it comes to calligraphy or drawn letters in some way. So here is an example. This is actually very large, which is why we can't see it all, but it does help us to home in on various aspects of it. So again, it's the charcoal and the Conte, and these lines here are erased. So it's amazing how clean a line that can be, and also the fact that some lines come through here. Again, that is caused by the eraser. This area is shaded, rubbed in with the finger usually, and then eraser over the top, and it draws the lines through. And also on a piece like this, I have got, apart from the lines that actually make up the letter, I have got additional lines. So for example, this one that comes through, and this one here that's coming over the top. And these lines are also enhanced. So that area of the line there is different to that. So I'm going to show you in a minute about how one does that. So this, is, for me, is totally about line. The letter is, it's all drawn for a start. It's made up of lines and shading. And of course, the all important red dot, which one student said many years ago, she said, I always think of that as the dollop of Yallop. Look, Yallop, it is a very unusual name, which people do struggle with. But hey, if we can sort of use it in some other way like this, being a dollop of Yallop, then, why not? We've got more examples of this sort of thing here again, and these are erased lines through, and they pull through here and take some of the charcoal through with them. And then this is done with a brush, but again, the erased lines through, and the feel of this is different because of the the texture of the brush, and the fact that we can have we can start fine here, we can press more, so we've got a bolder line here. And taking that one step ahead here is same idea, but this is done with a Cola pen. So this sort of line that is made by a Cola pen, I just find extraordinary, really. Every time you make that line, you actually don't really know how it's going to turn out, which in some ways is a slight worry, and in other ways is is really quite exciting. And who knows about the spatter? Is that going to work this time, or where's it going to go? And this is the bitten edge that I refer to, and it really, you don't get that with any other tool. And here, the erased line through. So taking this also a sort of a step further, look at this line. Now this, although it looks as if it was done with a brush, this is actually done with a piece of balsa wood. It's like this. So it's a piece, it's sort of, a strip basically, and then you can you cut them to however you want them. And it's surprising how much like a brush it is to use that tool. And so the texture here of this, now I've actually done some shading in there as well, so that's taken that down a bit, as opposed to too much of the sort of lightness of the paper coming through. And erased lines here as well. And of course, just one line here done with a ruling pen, with a pointed ruling pen. And taking it sort of further, this was a piece also done with a Cola pen. So we've got the the bitten edge and the spatter here. But I did the drawing side of it comes in, the shading, and then the erased lines, which are appropriate for a storm, that's driving rain, it's flashes of lightning, say. So yeah, and that is done on a more textured paper, that one. So it's slightly more grainy than something smoother.
That's just like last Sunday.
Yes.
That's another story.
That is another story. Yes, yes. And you know, here's another one where I employed the drawing. This is done with a pointed ruling pen. Again, the shading, drawn lines through with Conte, and erased lines as well. So the difference that makes to have the black line and the white line, shall we say. So very much sort of light and shade there. So I'm going to just show you one or two things on about doing that. So I did these earlier. And what they are is a piece of compressed charcoal, and you basically do this, and then you can blend, and you can add more, and so on until you get a darker line. And then to make an erased line, I've got this Staedtler plastic eraser. And because when they're new, they're nice and got a nice clean cut edge to them. But after a bit, of course, it wears down and so on. So I just slice a piece off so that I know that that's got a really nice clean edge. And then we need to position this so that just that edge or that edge there is in contact with the paper. And then we just go. And of course, we don't know whether it's going to it's going to work, but we just need to go for it. So let's give it a go and see. So that is erased through slightly thicker. So let's see if we can get something a bit thinner here. That's a better one. There we are. Let's try another one. So we can also just do the shading technique where we just pull through like this. And some of that charcoal will come through onto here. You can leave it like that, but you could just erase that out if you wanted to. Okay. So an erased line is a really interesting thing to look at, because we think of drawing lines that we actually sort of use a tool, a pen or pencil, crayon or whatever to actually make a line. So on the Conte side of it, of doing lines, is Conte à Paris, the Pierre Noir ones. You can, of course, make a line through with that. We could add a dark line to this so that we have a contrast of the white lines and the dark lines. We can enhance these lines. So that's okay, it's a bit lighter at that end than this end. But just say we want to make more sort of light and shade in here. So we can just go over this and have a sort of a more nuanced line by carefully darkening this area. And it's just a sort of a slow and careful process. So these all techniques that I would use in drawing and in the in doing things like this, for example, in combining these kind of drawn techniques with lettering. Right. Now I'm going to move on to looking at ruling pens. So having talked about, you know, that incredible line that we get with a ruling pen. So this, I think, is a good example of it. So this is the Kohler pen. So I'm sure, you know, many of you have made one. And I just think it's amazing that, you know, you set off on this line and you don't know about the texture and what it's going to be like. Or as you come down here, is it going to spatter out like this or not? Because, you know, sometimes when you make that line, it doesn't do that. So, you know, I think it's great that each time it is new, that it may work, it may not. But the quality of that sort of line, I find amazing. You know, there's so much going on, you know, in here. The way this pulls out here, more sort of spattery in, you know, in this area. Or over here, all these little exterior little dots that have put in. Although I must confess here that some of these little dots here are actually added afterwards. And that was something I learned from Michael Clark. He was a great one for doing that. So yeah, so that can certainly help enhance things.
It's the graphic designer's retouch.
It's the retouch. Yes, yeah.
It's allowed.
It is allowed. Yes, it's interesting that actually, Mario, because I can. Oh, I don't know. Did I feel that early on, sort of like, oh, you can't retouch. You must do it all in one go. And yeah, it's sort of cheating if you retouch. And some years ago, Sheila Waters said to me, no, you are making it the best that it can be. Nothing wrong with retouch. So I thought, well, you know, if she says that, it's fine, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So and you know, also ruling pen line here, the fact that with one pen you can get this finer line on this textured paper. So we're adding more to the bit and edge here, but we can also have a line like that as well. So different. Or here, because it all depends on how you hold the pen, we can have 3 lines that are all the same weight, but again that bitten edge to them. And here's another example. How about using multiple lines to make a letter? So this part and this part. And again, there's that one line through that one sort of, you know, extra line. Because before I did that, you know, I sort of think, well, you know, you think you're doing a W, so we'll do a line here and one here and one here and that one, and maybe we add those or what. But no, why not do multiple lines to make up that letter? And here's an example of kind of, well, yes, of using a double line to make the weighted part of the letter. So this is rather like the shaded ones I showed you earlier, but without that in. And again, this one line through here. Now I must admit that it's scary doing that one line. Because you know you've made the rest of the letter, you think, right, okay, I think that this is fine, and then right, I've got to do this one line, and then, you know, load up the pen. This is a bit done with a pointed ruling pen, and off you go, and you hope that it works. Another thing with pointed ruling pen, so this is done with this one. So, you know, you can make really quite free letters, but you can also make do drawn letters with these. These are, of course, very, very condensed. But again, that you know, that line, that bitten edge, how, I mean, these are drawn to a certain extent. I mean, one would do the main body of the letter, but then enhance that, add weight here and there, and spend a lot of time looking at the edge of the line, keeping that bitten edge to it. So this pointed ruling pen belonged to my late father, and he had it in a geometry set, which he would have had at when he was at school. So yeah, he was born in 1918. So, you know, perhaps this is from, I don't know, probably 1930 or a little bit later. So yeah, so great that I'm still using it after all this time. And another sort of thinking about line and the pointed ruling pen is that, you know, you think, oh, pointed tool, you know, makes a thin line really. You know, as we have here, these areas are enhanced, so we've got more weight here than here. But depending on how you hold the tool, you can get a line which is that thick as well, which I just find incredible that you can get that out of the one tool. We can have this line, but we can have that line too. And I'll smooth these out for me. Here's another piece. Do you think this is M for Margaret?
It's my favorite letter.
Yes. And this was, though this is not a ruling pen, this is is it EZA, how you spell it? EZ -A. Alan Ariel makes these, and it behaves very much like a ruling pen. One part of this nib is flat, so that can be laid down flat on the paper, and you can get a nice thick line, and you can tip it on its edge and get a thin line like this. And often going up here, then it explodes and you get the spattery line. But again, this edge, this bitten edge. And I would, you know, when it comes to doing particularly Cola pen or this work, I would go back and look at that edge. So, you know how sometimes, I don't know, a bit, it hasn't come out quite right down here or something, but the rest of it is okay. So definitely I would always go back and touch that in and look at that edge, look at the quality of that line and see, is it okay? You know, is that working all right? Could I enhance things a little more? Could I think in this case, probably took that out a little bit further there, or here, say, you know, all the spattery bits were on this side, for example, and you felt, you know, we could do with a bit more over here to improve that line, improve that sort of gesture, then go back into that and just dot some in. And another piece done with the with Alan's pen was this. So again, the large, the flat edge for that, and this was actually the pointed ruling pen. But again, you know, what happens with this as you come round here and turn the corner and poof, and again these secondary lines added here. So I don't know, the kind of the life that that comes into these lines through using a tool like this is incredible. And of course, this one is contrast to that. And one more example on this was this piece. Again, done with this pen, but again that edge. Now, of course, here, you know, we've also got texture within the line as well, and not a particularly sort of textured paper either, but the tool is doing that, is making that quality of line. So I'm going to bring some paper and do a few strokes using these pens. It's a good thing well, I shouldn't say it's a good thing I'm wearing black. Actually, I've got white on the front, so maybe that's not such a good idea. In case of spattering. So I've just got some Pelican ink, and I'm now going to use the Cola pen. So let's have a look at a line we could make with this. Okay. And I think it's interesting how you get a line through the middle of that as well. And that's, of course, because that's the bit that's very much firmly on the page. And sometimes, okay, let's leave it like that. But what about just filling it all in while it's still really quite wet here? And when I talked about using the pointed ruling pen and to improve that line, I would just come in like this, and I would think, let's just fill that in perhaps there. And you know, it's fun, play around with this line and make corrections to it. Here we've got quite a few sort of longer bits coming through. You know, could we do with some more down in this area? Perhaps we could. Well, you can just add that in. So it's with the Cola pen work, I don't know, perhaps do we think that we just dash off those lines and that's it? I don't do that. Well, the line is done at speed, but then there's a lot of care in looking back at that line and seeing what we can do with it. Obviously, depending on how we hold the tool, we could have this right on its tip and have a much thinner line. Or, you know, as that one is right on the edge here. That's it. Now the pointed tool. So as I showed with that example, you know, we can just do thin lines like this. Just hold it as you would any pen or pencil, and we can just have thin lines. But if we change the position of the pen in the hand and hold it more like this, we can get a much lower angle to the page and have thicker lines. So we could have that, or we can press it further down to the page and have a line like that. Now, wow, to have that thickness and this thickness from this one pen. I find that incredible. And obviously, you know, these can be used freely as well. And again, you know, look what happens here with that edge. Do we keep it like that, or do we want to sort of go in and just make a few corrections to it? So for me, looking back at these lines, and so you made that line and then you look again at it in detail and just think, shall I, you know, can I just touch that up? Can I enhance that in some way? What could I do to improve that line? So let's use Alan's pen here as well. So as I said, that's got a flat edge there. So if we get that really flat onto the page, we can have a broad line like that. But again, you know, the texture in there. Let's try it. Turn it over onto the other side. Now there, it's different. Let's zoom in on that. Okay. So much more broken, and that sort of that very sort of bitten edge there. Okay, it's quite smooth in many ways. Now, if we hold this pretty much upright, we're going to get obviously a finer line, but again, one that's got a sort of nuanced look to it, which you could go back and touch into if you know, if you wanted to. Yeah, so there's sort of the quality of line for using the ruling pen, I just think it's fascinating. And also because you don't altogether know how it's going to turn out. You load up, you make a start, and it's almost as if each time it's something new, and it's just like, whoa, look at that. So I very much enjoy doing that. Way. Now, another tool is a brush. So here is an example where this is done with the brush. Now I've actually added in some a bit of the charcoal shading in here in order to just to sort of darken that down a bit. And then, of course, there is just one extra line, and that line must be placed correctly for it to work. So again, there's a sort of risk in doing that, and this is enhanced, this line. So as I came around here, that would have been a bit thicker here than there anyway, but I have added to that. And again, the little dots here, the more spattery dots, and here too. So I think with this piece, we've got a contrast of line too with this one. There's the weight, of course, but there's the texture within this line compared to that one. Here's another brush piece. So this is white gouache on black paper. There are areas here where the brush is more loaded than you know, than it is up here, for example. And the thing that fascinates me about this is where we place one line over another and what happens there. So particularly here, that this one underneath is, you know, we're beginning to run out of gouache a bit there. So it's a much paler line, but then this one is more loaded. So that one is going over the top, and the kind of the light and shade involved in that. And down here, we just have one white line coming through, and here one black line coming through. And there, those are erased lines there. And of course, the dollop of Yallop, which has to be red. I mean, come on, you know, are there other colours? No, of course not. Black, white and red, I mean, you know. Yeah, so I like the way the overlapping of lines there. Or also with a brush, we can, this is obviously a very wide one, and rather sort of coarser hairs on it. So we've got this sort of finish to it. And again, there's the contrast with this is the pointed ruling pen again, to make that. And here's another brush piece. Now I shall show you in a minute about holding the brush in such a way that you get this sort of line compared to one that's more linear, like these. But you know, in making this letter A, it was, well, we can break this down into a number of lines, and how many lines is enough? How many lines is actually too many? Another thing I love about the brush is the way that, you know, as you come around the corner, you can turn it and you can have that sort of finish there. And then this is a bit large really to show on the screen. But this again, brush, the wide flat brush, some shading going on in here, the addition of a few extra lines, again, ruling pen. So we've got the smoothness of the brush line and just the textured bit of a spatter edge there. And here's another one as well. So really a lot of lines going on there, but they've got to be put in the right place, you know. And here there's the contrast of the broad brush and actually a pointed brush on these areas, and also the ruling pen. And these pieces I did in collaboration with Michael Clark, and this is how that one was used with his Out of Chaos Comes Order. And the treble clef, this is how there's bright light on that. How this one was used. All art constantly aspires to the condition of music. So I thought you might like to just to see those. And you know, and also with brush, you know, you can, this is much more linear, because you can separate out the hairs so that you get white lines coming through, which you can very much see here in these places. And of course you can have a line that's more loaded with ink than others, like that. These are more linear ones. These are a sort of more mottled look. And then on top of this, of course, we have got the ruling pen lines as a contrast. And of course, how do they work together? You know, you need to get them in the right place. And then just one other brush thing, of course, a pointed brush, which you know, is a fun thing to use. And I like the pressure and release type thing, which of course you do with a pointed nib. So to you know, to really be able to vary weight, particularly here within one letter. Or also I like to, you know, putting weights in almost like the wrong place. It's you know, that is interesting. So I like and enjoy doing pointed brush work as well. So I'm just going to show you one or two things with the brush. So more paper. And yeah. So I'm going to use this one, flat brush, and just get it dipped in the ink. And carefully take some off on the edge here. Okay, so that is very linear. We've obviously got more ink here. And sometimes I think if you really very much wanted that sort of effect, let's just take some off on another piece of paper, you know, before we do that. But to get that linear effect, the brush needs to be held pretty much upright to the page. But then I found, you know, if we want it, we don't want that. We want something that's a bit more mottled. We hold it lower to the page. We're going to get that look. So let's just zoom in on that. There we go. So definitely very linear. I mean, each, you know, if you could really focus in, you know, with a microscope or down here, you know, you would see that each of those lines is really precise in its own way, and yet they're so fine. And whereas here, yeah, we have got a linear look through here, but they are it's much more of a mottled effect. And I just think that's great that you can get that just depending on how you hold the tool. You know, and another thing, of course, is that, you know, we can just separate these out a bit, and let's get something that's got more white spacing. See what happens with that. There we are. Yes. It's such a sort of thrill, you know, you make these line think, oh yeah, look at that. One, you know, over the top here. Yeah, so I just find it amazing that we can, even just those 3 different types of line that we can get out of this one tool, just depending on how we hold it, or you know, just making a few alterations to the edge of it. And then yeah, no, so this is the bit of balsa wood, because this I always think is quite a good alternative to the brush. So let's just do now that, you know, could absolutely be that. You know, very much looks as if that was done with a brush. So I always think that, you know, that can be quite a fun alternative, really, to try. And then let's just try a pointed brush. Now, I pretty much would always use these for doing pointed brush work. It's got, because it just does have an amazing point on it. And it kind of holds its own a bit, you know, it doesn't, it keeps its shape. And again, you know, I like the fact that we can have just such a fine line like that. We could press the whole way and get that line with that interior texture. Or we can press and release, or the other way. Yeah, whatever. So again, the fact that you can control the type of line, you can make the sort of line that you want by the way that you hold the tool, by how much you press, say. And again, to be able to get that line and that line out of this one tool, I just find fascinating. It's amazing how time is rushing on. So I've got one other thing to show you about the pointed nib. So some examples here. Now, this is an envelope I was given. Well, it came through the post from the late Jean Larcher. And I'm sure there are many people who have got lovely envelopes from him. This was, I don't know, you know, possibly at least 25 years ago, I'd say. And I first started learning copperplate with him, and he employed the swelling line. So we can really see it here, for example. We start fine, it swells to a thickness, and then it becomes fine again. And letters like here, for example, he's starting fine and then pressure and then off again. But he didn't, you know, always do that. So we can see here that he's done squared off ends to those letters, rather than finishing like that, for example. Yeah, and it's huge, this as well. So yeah, so I was very grateful for Jean's way of teaching that, and I have continued to employ the swelling line, because I don't know, I feel it has more life, really, than one of more constant weight. So some examples here. So this was for a certain birthday a while ago. And again, you see the swelling line. We start really fine and we press. And I can remember Jean all those years ago saying that one of the, you know, the most difficult things to do with copperplate was to get that weight in the right place. And I mean, and absolutely, he was correct. So in making that line, when do you start to press? How much do you press? And as you come down here, you know, you've got to start to release the pressure, because we need to turn the corner right here and to go up over and round to make the next letter. And, you know, you've got to be really thinking about that as you're making each line. So here is some more Again, all fine, the finishes, the starts. But again, I find, you know, the line one can make with the pointed pen is, you know, you can vary it so much. So here I have squared off the end here, and really had more weight, whereas here much finer weight. This is a bit bolder too. Here, you know, with the way we've just turned that corner a bit there before we do a fine line that's going to come up and join onto whatever the next letter is. So you can, I suppose, once again with the other tools, I mean, you can make the tool do what you want. Here's another example. So here, of course, we've got really pulled out lines. And then here's a white on bleed-proof white, I'm pretty sure in this case, on black paper, where I thought, no, let's get a much sort of closer effect, more condensed, you know, and finish the lines, you know, not quite so fine. Let's have just a little bit more weight at the bottom of those lines. It's another piece. And then this one where again I decided that let's change this. So let's finish this these lines not so much in a fine point. Let's just have a little bit more weight at the bottom. And that follows through on all the letters. So it's very subtle change, but just to do that, we start fine here. The swell is slightly more at the bottom there, really. We do finish in a point, but it's not quite the same as the other examples I showed you. And then another thing to do is why not use two lines? So here, using the pointed nib to make this the letter R, but why not add an extra line to it? Now you can sort of think, oh well, you know, we just put another line next to it, but you know that you have to really think about what that line is going to be like. It needs to be lighter weight than the line that's making the main body of the letter. Where does it start? Based on the line that you've already done. Where does it finish? So again, you know, those things I find that so interesting to just to make those two lines together, and what it takes to work that out so that, you know, so that it works. So I'm now just going to show you some pointed pen stuff. So different sort of paper. I like the Rhodia paper for this because it's so smooth. And I also like to use the a straight holder because I like to manipulate how it is in my hand. And I think perhaps with the oblique, it's a bit you know, I don't know, gets in the way. Really. So yeah, there's so much that you can do. We can obviously just make very fine lines here. Let's zoom in on this to see it easier. You know, really fine lines, whether we're going up or down. The swelling line, thin, press, press, press. Come off again. We could start with more weight at the top and go thin. Or we could start thin and press and finish. Maybe just square that off. So we have a heavy finish. We can do, if we're looking at, for example, the line of universal beauty, we can have the swell here so that there's more of that shape to it. Or we can do a line like this, but of a more constant weight. So we come round here and we press pretty much the same pressure as we go down before we start to turn the corner. So I would, on the whole, would be doing that. And I find that so interesting about how different that is and how different it feels actually when you write that line, when, the type of pressure that's needed to create that as opposed to that. Yeah, so let's do one of those where we put an extra line on. And of course, we can very much do different weights as well. Let's just do a straight line. We can have it really quite thin like that. We can add more pressure. We can add more pressure still. So we can probably have something finer than that front one as well. Let's just try and, there we are, that's a bit better. So again, to be able to do this one and this one, but with this same pointed nib, and depending on how you hold it, the pressure and so on, the fact that you can make those lines, I think it's very, I find it endlessly fascinating. And one thing I was looking at recently, let's just do this at letter N. So we're going to finish in a point here. And if we just ended straight like that, and then we do that in order to move into the next letter. So that, the way that finishes, but actually what is much better to do is this. We just turn it very slightly, and then we put that in. And so it's a tiny thing, but that's the sort of nuance of that, the way you can just change that line very slightly before you add this, and the difference that makes, I think, again, for me, endlessly fascinating. So yeah, so in conclusion, really, I feel that concentrating on the quality of line is essential to good calligraphy and lettering. And yeah, and even after 43 years, I still find that fascinating, and I find it great that even after all that time, it still thrills me to make a line using whatever tool. So I think we will stop there. We're just slightly over time. All right. So I'm going to turn the camera around again now. There we are.
Did you notice, Rachel, there is a blue piece in the corner by the door by guess who?
Ah, I can see it. Yes.
It's a long way away, but
It is a long way away. Yes. Yeah.
yes, that dates
yes.
back to Sunderland in 2002.
Does it? Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And I couldn't believe he told me that he would do things like that for relaxation.
Right.
And at that time, I had never picked up a pointed pen in my life to do
Yes.
anything like that. And I thought, relaxation? Are you mad?
Well, yes, it depends if you've got the client breathing down your neck or whatever, but it is, I think, because there's such a drawn quality to it, and I think that copper plate appeals to me because of the drawing side. yeah, I would. There is a calming effect to it, actually. Yeah, yeah.
It is that maybe when you know what you're doing. I think,
Actually, maybe that is a point. Yes, yeah.
I think
um,
that's a really good point. I just loved watching you do this. And
yeah.
this is the kind of thing I agree with you. I could see your joy as you were
Oh,
demonstrating, and I feel like, oh, I could just do this all day, and just look at lines. But I also see your drawing background, and I also see those years of control in your hand, because like when you make that double line thing, I mean, that takes a kind of control of the hand, I mean,
yes,
you're so
yes,
skilled at that, and you can just see it. It's just wonderful to watch. And those subtle changes, I agree with you. It's just, there are so many nuances when you really
yes.
start to see. So
Yeah,
thank you
and
so much.
I think that's it's so important. I've
Yeah,
had the copper plate students who are very keen to get on. Let's be writing letters and let's get the letters into words and write long pieces and so on. Whereas if you actually look at the quality of the line that they're using to make those letters, it's not that good. And so really it then spoils the whole piece. So to actually
yeah,
work on the line quality is so important.
it is.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, but maybe people think, oh God, what more lines? I just want to write words. Whereas I could write lines for hours.
Me too. I just love lines, and I also like just like ductus strokes, and seeing
Yes.
what
Yeah.
those do. Those are the parts of letters, but they're the
Mm,
lines. And
mm.
oh yeah, it makes me want to just pick up my pen and go make lines all day.
Yes. Well, do.
I wish I could find my ink.
Oh, Margaret, maybe I should make a trip over the hills and bring you. I've got loads of it.
I've
So
got
you're
the
using
nibs.
Pelican ink, you said? Which
Yes,
Pelican?
yes. I mean, there are, these
Oh, 4001.
little pots, but
Oh,
hang on a minute. Um, I bought this. It's
A
huge.
bucket
How much
full.
is in here? Oh, 100 mil is in here. Yeah. So that it should last a while, I think.
yeah.
So yeah, and I just pour it out into one of the little pots. Yeah. So yeah, I find this it works well. Yeah. So yeah, it flows nicely, which is obviously what we need. So yeah.
I'd like to know where I can find a nib holder like the one that you were using just now. It looks like it's acrylic.
This one, yeah.
Yes,
It's Italian. It was made by Stefano Costantini, and he has his sort of company, for want of a better word, is Sec Wood Pen. So SEC, capital SEC Wood Pen. You just put that into Google or whatever. He's on Instagram and that sort of place. And this is the Suprema holder. And he makes them. They come in various colors, but obviously mine is red.
obviously.
Um, and there's a sort of grip bit here, which is nice. And one of the things I think is great about them is that it's weighted down at this end. So I don't know, it sort of helps you feel a bit more in control of it than handling I don't know, a very light tool, for example. But anyway, it's SEC wood pen, and he's got all sorts of ones there. But they're not cheap, but they're absolutely lovely. I think it's great. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent talk, Rachel.
Good.
Kathy had a question. What kind of eraser did you use? I think, well, you used a Stadler eraser.
Yes.
But,
Yes.
you mentioned that you cut it. How do you cut it?
Yes, using a scalpel or a craft knife. Obviously, when it's new, it's got a nice clean edge. But then, even with just making the erased lines, okay, it's not like you're really kind of rubbing out something, but it's still isn't such a clean edge as you might need to make a nice a good line. So yeah, I would just, I just place this on a board and with a scalpel or craft knife just carefully slice a small section off. And you get, if you need to cut carefully, but you get such a clean edge, it's great. Yeah. Obviously means the bit that you've cut off you probably aren't using, but they're not particularly expensive, so yeah, it doesn't feel like too much of a waste to do that.
I've had a couple of teachers who cut those erasers and use the cut off bits
Right.
for really fine erasing. Like,
Yes, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
I've done
Yeah.
that too. It was one of the things that I was taught in the advertising agency I used to work at in
Oh,
Manchester.
was it? Yeah.
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 So I was interested to see that you used the block with the sliced off bit. I used the sliced off bit.
Ah.
I've got a little pot, an empty creme fraiche pot full of
Yeah.
bits.
Ah, that's a good, yes. Yeah. No,
Which,
I'm gonna have to try that now, I see. Yes. I've
yeah.
still got the bit that I cut off from there earlier, so
It works.
yes, yeah.
Do you give a class showing these techniques, an online workshop, showing the techniques you
Yeah.
did today?
I've
Is that-
yeah, I've got I've got one class yeah, looking beyond the literal letter, that's right, and where we do use all sorts of different tools and to make different sorts of we design our own letters apart from perhaps using more conventional ones, but using lots of different tools, yes. And actually one of the main focuses on that is line as well. So yeah, there is that one. Yeah.
Okay, looking beyond the literal letter. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. I
Going
can send
back,
you the details, Raoul, if you need it.
is it looking
Sorry.
beyond the literal letter or the little letter?
The
Literal.
literal letter.
Mm.
Yes. Yeah. So just trying to think outside the box a bit, and again it does very much focus on line. So yeah.
Going back to your landscape drawing in Spain, Rachel, right at the
Yes.
beginning,
Yes.
it rang two bells. First of all, I went to see the John Piper exhibition locally on Friday,
Yeah.
and some of his marks were of that nature, considering not just the nature of the line, but how they were placed in relation to each,
Yes.
but also Yves Le Tam and his gestural marks and how
Yes.
they swell a little bit and are carefully placed, not
Yes.
without consideration. And I
Yes.
think that's what strikes me about a lot about your work is, although that it is obviously very carefully considered, it doesn't look manipulated to the point of being orchestrated. It looks natural, and you think, my goodness, how did she do that? And now we've seen how.
Yeah, that is the point. I mean, particularly, yes, with Eve's work and or yes, or using the Kohler pen or whatever, you do need to probably have an element of speed to it to get the type of line. But yes, it isn't just and that's it. No, do a line, stop, think, where's the next one going? So yeah, and yet the end result looks probably as if you have just done it like that. Yeah.
But it does require a considerable amount of thought before you make
It
the mark.
does. Yes. Yeah. I call it disciplined freedom.
Yeah, right.
So there is a huge amount of discipline in those lines and in the way the letters are made or placed together and all the rest of it. But yet it looks free. So yeah, I think that the idea that very sort of free gestural stuff is just sort of dashed off. It is not right at all. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for
Yeah.
enlightening us and entertaining. I found it fascinating to watch you
Good.
doing all the different, using the different tools I've seen through the workshops I've done with you online with copper plate and
Yes.
ran away squawking. So you can't do this. To see you do it is just so therapeutic.
Yeah. But it's so interesting to use different tools.
Yes.
And again, it's the line that it makes, which is the fascinating thing. And you don't alter, particularly when I don't brush maybe not so much, but certainly the ruling pens, you don't altogether know how it's going to turn
you
out.
don't.
And there is a sort of thrill to that. If it
Frisson.
worked out okay, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah, I think when I've got all my kit organized, or rather when I've found out where it all is, yes, I will have the time to do a bit of experimentation.
Good.
Margaret, are you taking photographs of the progress of your unpacking and or
Oh no, Evelyn, we just did not have time.
I think it
As
would be
soon-
fascinating to see
uh,
where it is. So start right now. Point.
Well, okay, I'll take a photograph of the studio tomorrow morning before I start excavating. Jeff did a certain amount of it last week, but it was the last room. We decided that finding a clean kitchen, where we could actually sit down at a table when we got chairs, because when we arrived on Thursday, all we had was a bed, and an awful lot of plants in the garden and not much else. But we frantically had to start emptying boxes because they take them away and credit you with a reuse. I think it's £2.50 a box, and we had rather a lot, considerably more than 100, most of which had books in. Okay, Evelyn, I will do that. Record the horrible, tedious process, because we just had to do it for our own sanity. I think we would have run off screaming and jumped in there's no lake round here. It's just a very shallow pond in Priory Park.
Rachel, Kathy had a question.
Yes, I
what
saw
do you-
that pop up. Yes. Let's just get a piece that's got that on. Yes, so the dollop of Yallop, how is that done? I cut it from a piece of red paper. On the back, I put some double-sided tape, and then again using a knife, I just cut out a little square, and then peel off the covering of the double-sided tape. I then place the little square onto the end of the knife, so that because of course it's very sticky underneath, and then I can sort of hover around. You can spend really quite a long time hovering over the piece of work, thinking, should it go here or here or whatever, and then I place it, press it down, and I've got pieces that I've had for years, and I've carted them off to workshops all over the place, and it's still there, so it does stick well. And I kind of quite like the fact that it's slightly off the surface, so a cut piece of paper, rather than, because the rest of it is ink or gouache or whatever, and that's flat to the page, but you've just got this slight lift of the dollop of Yallop. So that's how I do it. It's actually a piece of cut paper stuck on.
Interesting. Right. I thought that would have been done with gouache, but it's actually a
Yes.
separate piece
Yeah,
of.
no, actually, yes, yeah. And the process of deciding where it's going to go, I find that very interesting. It's a small thing, but so yeah. yeah, that's how it done that, and that it works well for you know, that process works well, and it does stay there. It sticks well. So
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation today. It was fascinating to see so many different techniques. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Rachel's website, check it out at rachelyallop.co.uk.
And I put in the chat a link to Rachel's upcoming class about the looking beyond the little letter.
so right, yes, it's on the, yeah, I haven't got one scheduled, but it's on, but you can go onto the website and just look at what it's about. Yeah, and examples and so on.
Can I just ask a question before we finish?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was a bit like, because my husband's mowing the lawn outside, so it's really noisy, so I'll hurry
Oh
up.
no.
But we're opening the summer house for the season, so that's also why I'm sort of fighting all these mosquitoes. Anyway, my question was, do you ever dabble with printmaking? Because that's also a way of creating really interesting lines, like with
Yeah.
etching or dry point print, you know, printmaking or.
Yes, and I used to. Yes, I haven't done any for a long time, but I used to you know, do lino cuts. Yeah, and I was actually really, yeah, very keen on doing printmaking, and then one thing and another sort of took over, and I haven't done any for a while. But I've lately been thinking, maybe I, you know, have a go at that, because I love that sort of work. You know, examples I see of other people's work. It's just, again, the line. It's fascinating.
Exactly. And also, oh my God, it's coming back. I don't know if you can hear it, but and also because your drawings that you showed at the beginning,
Yeah.
I've seen some of them before because you posted some on Facebook or Instagram, but that's ages ago. But they're just absolutely amazing. They're so stunning.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I do. Yeah, I do love to draw. And as I said, it's something I did from a very young child, and just kept on, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm be looking forward to see your experiments then.
Oh, yes. No, all right. I feel, yeah, more spurred on now to perhaps try that. Yeah.
Okay, I hope that you can join us next month when Andreas Stoffels will talk about his project Amnesia Atomica. The next Blackletter Brunch will be on Sunday, June 16th at 10 a.m. Same link. I will send out the link to the Blackletter Brunch in a little while. And I will also include the link to today's recording. Okay.
Right.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you very much, Rachel, for a lovely talk. And
Yeah. No, that's a
Thank
pleasure.
you,
Thank
Oh, it was
Raoul.
you
wonderful.
for inviting me. It meant that I had, you know, at least an hour just to do lines. Yes.
And you had fun.
And I had fun doing
Yeah,
it. Well,
we
it
can
is
tell.
fun. It's yes, it is fun. So, you know, get on out there and make some lines.
Yes, ma'am.
Good, great, lovely, and nice to see you all. Yes, some very well-known faces there.
Good to see you.
Thanks for a great
Thank you.
presentation.
Great, thank you. Bye.
have a
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.